recognition, and we'll be joined by Mr. Kevin Bowmiller and General Hammond for that presentation. Then we'll have the appointment of the Assistant Superintendent, the timeline on the Joshua Eaton Principal Search, an update from Special Education led by Dr. Stiles, and then our spring update followed by the first reading of 2 policies, and the second reading will follow on several other policies. So having said that, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll have the vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
And Chuck, aye. Thank you. Okay, reports. Bridget, is Bridget Parks? Hi, Bridget.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Okay, so we have a ton of senior events coming up. Next Friday is the last day of classes for all of us. May 28th, we have a field day to replace the all-night party where we can play kickball, do different crafts, have an all-around good time. June 3rd is senior prom. June 6th is our graduation. And then May 20th is the spring choral concert, which will have parent guests, but will be filmed. May 22nd is the band concert. And on Wednesday, May 12th, the boys lacrosse beat Woburn High School. And May 11th, the boys and girls tennis teams beat Woburn. And on May 8th, baseball won against Winchester. And that is all I have for you tonight.
Oh, I was muted. Thank you, Bridget. Okay, do we, Dr. Doherty, do we have any staff reports, or is that just in the presentation?
It's in the presentation, and Dr. Stice will be doing hers later.
Thank you. Aaron?
No report tonight, Chuck.
Thank you. Tom?
Just one little update. The liaisons for the select board have been adjusted. So Mark Doxer is still going to be a liaison, but also Chris Haley will be the second liaison to the school committee.
Thank you. Carla?
No report, Chuck. Thank you.
Sarah?
No report tonight, Chuck. Thanks.
And Sean?
No report. Thank you.
And I'll just report out that the social media coordinators up next now are Carla and Sean. Yeah.
We're on it.
Okay. So we'll start up with the Vietnam veterans. Vietnam War veterans presentation. I know Gail was going to introduce that. I just wanted to say something real quickly and welcome Mr. Bowmiller and General Hammond. This is near and dear to my heart. My father's a Vietnam veteran as well, so this is very, very good. I love this. So, Gail, sorry.
Great. No, thank you very much, Chuck. I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce. We have the town manager, Bob Lillishire, is here in support of this proposal, so he will be joining us as well. I am very pleased to introduce Kevin Bowmiller, who is the Reading Veterans Senior Officer, and Brigadier General Jack Hammond, who are here tonight. Kevin and I have been working behind the scenes, I want to say probably about a year now, to schedule this for presentation. We were cautiously optimistic that we were going to be able to do this earlier in the year, and then in hopes for Memorial Day, but I am excited to hear their presentation tonight and am in strong support of this. And I know that the committee will be in support as well, with our goal of being able to do an unveiling in time for Veterans Day, where hopefully things will be slightly more back to normal. With that, I do want to turn it over. Thank you both so much for taking the time to be with us this evening. And I know John has the slides to present. We thought that might be easier.
It is easier. I was going to ask you because I couldn't figure it out.
We're here for you, Kevin. Take it away.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And like Gail said, I think we started this conversation close to a year ago. And needless to say, a few other things have gotten in our way. But we're glad to have the opportunity to meet with you tonight and share our vision on how to recognize and memorialize all those who have served, not just, there were 7 Reading high school graduates who unfortunately we lost during the war, and they are memorialized. There's a plaque in the hallway as well as on the flagpole down on the town common. So this is a project we did. Unfortunately, I can't remember the English teacher's name, but we did it about 4 years ago. And there's a handful of Vietnam veterans in there. There's Korean veterans, and there's some World War II veterans. Nelson Burbank is over there on the left. And I know all the veterans really enjoyed this project, sharing their stories. And I believe the students had a good time, and they did a great job with their stories. So it was a great event. And I'm going to let General Hammond speak a little bit about the Vietnam War commemoration. It's something he's worked on the national level. So General Hammond.
Thanks, Kevin. And Kevin, I just want to personally thank you for helping to drive this forward. As someone who born and raised in Reading High grad, as a young kid, my coaches were Vietnam vets. Some of the folks I looked up to in the world were Vietnam vets. And as I joined the Army as a young officer in the early 80s, again, I was trained and mentored by Vietnam vets. And so I got to hear their stories, and as a young platoon leader, occasionally have to deal with some of the effects of the war with their post-traumatic stress disorder. When I'd find, an amazing soldier, in the fetal position, in the shower with his uniform on, sobbing uncontrollably, and just unresolved mental health issues that, they just tried to tough it out. And through my work at home base, I was able to build on that and grow. And as we entered the 50th anniversary, the commemorative period for the Vietnam War, I met with my partners at the Red Sox and Mass General, and we decided to open home base, which is the nation's first and largest National Center of Excellence, solely focused on healing the invisible wounds for initially post 9/11 veterans. We made a corporate decision, a board decision, to open up this care to all combat eras, specifically with an eye towards our Vietnam vets during this commemorative period. And as we did that, we also thought it was right, proper, and fitting to host a welcome home ceremony, much like you see with a lot of units returning home. As many of you know, they never got that welcome home. They actually got the opposite. They received a very negative, harsh response through no fault of their own. And we hosted 1,500 Vietnam vets and had them come through the center field wall in a pregame New York Yankees game, and have 40,000 fans welcome them and thank them. And we had F-15s flying over. We had bagpipes, kettle drums, the whole deal. And each one of them got a commemorative medal and a shirt to indicate their branch of service. And as I spoke to each of these men, one in particular was a retired 4-star general who sacrificed a leg during Vietnam. He explained to me, he was a commanding general during Desert Storm, and he said, Jack, I got all the pats in the back I need for 5 lifetimes when I got back from Desert Storm. There were ticker tape parades in New York, my hometown. He happened to be from Reading, Pennsylvania, the other Reading. And he said, but in 50 years, this is the first time anybody ever acknowledged my service. And he said, if that digs at me, I just wonder how it feels to that private corporal sergeant that just did those 3 years and got out and had that empty gnawing spot that never was healed. And we know the end story. We've all seen the homeless veterans. We've all seen the folks that had a lot of traumatic issues. And so what I would tell you was, as I approached those men and women and thanked them and offered them the services of our care, most of them said, "I'm good. It's been 50 years. This is all I needed for closure, was thank you and welcome home." So I would submit to you that this is just a worthy endeavor. Reading is a proud, patriotic town, and I think it sends a proper message to our young people that, first of all, if there was an oversight then, it's never too late to do the right thing. And this is the proper time during the 50th anniversary for us to step forward, acknowledge those service members that served not only in the war, but during that time period, because many of them feel a separate shame because they didn't go to the war and they served during the war, and they feel like they were a little bit less than. And I've always shared with them that when you joined when the Army drafted you and they sent you to Germany or they sent you anywhere, you did your service, you did what they asked you did it well, God bless you. You did the right thing, and so never feel bad about that. So Vietnam vets, I put a message out on some of the Reading pages, and several combat veterans said we need to include everybody. They wanted to be very inclusive. And by the way, I just want to share with you, I don't wear my uniform on a regular basis. On behalf of the Chief of Staff of the Army, I was presenting some medals to some folks. I'm at the First Corps of Cadets Museum in Boston tonight. I had to find a room to go into to do this. And I've never really worked with Microsoft Teams on a laptop. I'm an iPad guy, so I'm kind of juggling my technology here. But I don't traditionally have my uniform on at night like this. But I'm in Boston and didn't have time to get home and change. But I'd like to thank Kevin for the work he's doing and the leadership of the town for embracing this opportunity. I think it's the right thing, the right time, and I appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you very much, General Hammond. And again, what we're looking for is to have a memorial at Reading Memorial High School to honor all who have served during the Vietnam War. When our time frame is hopefully Veterans Day 2021. Lord knows what kind of delays we might experience. Everything changes by the day, but that's our goal. Why now? We're losing too many Vietnam veterans. Just actually yesterday, I met with the widow. She recently lost her husband. He'd been ill for many, many years. He had heart disease. He had lymphoma. He had prostate cancer. He had diabetes. He had very severe neuropathy. All of these diseases are presumptive illnesses due to Agent Orange. He was boots on the ground in Vietnam, and he carried it home and lived with it. And now his wife is left on her own. We've lost so many. We want to honor the ones we still have with us. We want to honor their families. We want to honor their children, and just give them a big Reading welcome home. I've been to many Vietnam, the traveling walls, go to different towns, and those have been some of the most impactful times I've spent just seeing the vets gather together, Vietnam vets. They're hungry for comfort, and if we can give it to them in November, that's going to be great. Funding, it won't cost the schools anything. It shouldn't cost the town anything. We have a Veterans Memorial Trust Fund we can use to get the fund going. And as General Hammond has mentioned, there's much interest in a GoFundMe. So we'll be able to cover the costs of the memorial. And again, your approval to what we're asking tonight is your approval for the concept, and also hopefully we think this would be a great location, right outside the main door, opposite the flag. It wouldn't be a large memorial. We'd obviously come back to you with a design for final approval before we started the the procurement process. And these are just a few examples that I found on the web. There's hundreds of memorials out there, and we'll work in a group and come up with something very, very impactful. So, open for your questions, comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ballmiller and General Hammond. Just a wonderful presentation for the right thing, and thank you for your diligence in doing this. It's much appreciated. So what we'll do is have a motion, and then I'll ask the committee if they have anything they want to say.
So move to approve the proposal of the Vietnam's Veteran Recognition Plaque or Monument to be placed opposite the memorial wall in front of Reading Memorial High School.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Sean?
Thanks, Chuck. So General Hammond, first, I just wanted to say thank you, obviously, for your distinguished service. We can see from your left chest there that you had quite a remarkable career, but also for everything you've done with Home Base. I have a family member who's benefited greatly from some of the programs in Home Base, so I'm very appreciative of that. I don't have a lot to say other than this is an easy one for me. So thank you for bringing this to us. I'll happily support it tonight.
Tom?
I'll echo what Sean said, and I'll add a little bit more. General Hammond, you've been involved in Reading Public Schools for a long time too. I've attended Joshua Eaton ceremonies when you've been there, and thank you for that. Mr. Ballmiller, I think I've seen you in some of those as well, so thank you for that as well. This is not just a one-off where you're not connected to us from a school perspective already, so I want to thank you for that. And I also want to ask that the GoFundMe link be made public, and that maybe we can even publish it ourselves. So when you have that, I'd like to suggest the committee, and I see some nodding heads, so that we've publicly put it on our Facebook page, that we asked Dr. Doherty to publish it on his pathways, so we can make sure that the school community at large that is interested and willing to participate can participate in the fundraising for that, for this very, very worthy cause.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? Okay, ready for the vote. Aaron?
Enthusiastic, aye.
Sarah?
Still my adjective, enthusiastic, aye.
Carla?
The same thing. Thank you for your service, and a big aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Chuck, aye. Thanks again, gentlemen. It was great, and really appreciate what you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your support.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Great night, and we'll be back.
General Hammond, who was that in the portrait behind you?
That was Colonel Pollard, the first Corps cadet. Sometime maybe we'll host you all here. It's one of our gems in the city. It's a Massachusetts regiment. It's been in existence since 1741. I commanded this regiment in Iraq, and one of the previous commanders is John Hancock, and they have the inequities in uniforms going back to 1741. All through now, and actually they have a room dedicated to the post 9/11 deployments of the regiment in Iraq and Afghanistan. So it's a pretty special place here in Boston.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Good night.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Okay, Dr. Doherty.
Yes.
Time for the appointment of Assistant Superintendent.
Yes, hold on one second. I'm just going to pull up the slide. So thank you. As you know, we have been in the process, and when I mean we, it's been an extremely collaborative community effort, both external and internal, for the Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching. We have had a very strong pool, 43 applicants for the position. The screening committee, which consisted of the community members, teachers, administrators, parents, interviewed 9 very strong candidates. 4 of those finalists became finalists and will move forward. And then they went through another series of interviews. First was a small group with myself, Dr. Milicheski, CPA Dowd, and Dr. Stice, where we asked them a series of questions based on recommendations from the screening committee on additional areas to probe. Then we had an open microphone with staff. We had an open microphone with the community. Both were very well attended. We went through then reference checks through our different networks. Each of us talked to our respective colleagues to get more information on these candidates. And then at the end of the day, we gathered back, myself, Dr. Milicheski, CPA Dowd, and Dr. Stice, to have further conversation about who would be the best match for the next Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching. So it was a very collaborative decision, and at the end of the day, we came across with our recommendation to the school committee, which is Dr. Sarah Hardy. Dr. Hardy is currently the Central Office Administrator in the Stoneham Public Schools. She was previously an elementary school principal in Stoneham at 2 different schools. She was also a teacher in Chelmsford and Lowell. During this past year, in her role as a Central Office Administrator, she wore many hats. I don't know if you realize, but in Stoneham, there were a couple of situations where the Central Office Administrators, some of them were on medical leave, so Dr. Hardy had to do several different roles and responsibilities. As part of her role this year, she led the literacy and equity professional development for the district as a principal in Stoneham. She was very strong in the early literacy practices for her building and worked well with staff in building up their toolkit in instructional strategies. For her education background, she has a doctorate of education at Boston College. She has a CAGS and an MED from UMass Lowell and a BA from Rivier College. She's extremely well qualified to assume this role as Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching.
Thank you, Dr. Doherty. So we'll have a motion and then we can open up discussion for questions.
I move to approve Dr. Sarah Hardy as Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Teaching effective July 1st, 2021.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Tom?
Yeah, Dr. Doherty, thank you for the background there, and thank you for the conversation on Monday about that. I appreciated that. As one would probably expect, I reached out and did a little bit of digging myself and asked around, talked to Dr. Milicheski, talked to Dr. Stice, talked to Mrs. Dowd, and universally, this came through loud and clear like it was the best person for the job, for what the team needs right now, for where we're going to go forward to as a district. I think it came through loud and clear that as a team, this decision was made, and I'm ecstatic about that. It wasn't the person who I was expecting, frankly, but as it went through and as the reference checks went about, as the team interviews happened, as the team came together, sharpened your pencils and compared notes, this was the person that the entire team decided was the right person for our central office. And for that, I thank you and I thank the group for their collaborative work on this. And I will be supporting this recommendation.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? I'd just like to say thank you, Dr. Doherty, and to everybody that participated in the process. You know, once again, you know, we've uncovered some very strong candidates, and you know what, you know, your decision rose to the top, so that's good. Thank you.
I guess I have one more question, Chuck, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And Dr. Doherty, it may not be appropriate for now, so, you know, tell me to put it on the back burner if necessary. But looking at the calendar and July 1st and thinking about transitions, the school year ends June 21st for us. Is it possible that we would consider, you know, a June 15th or a June 21st, or is she going to need vacation time between, you know, school year to school year? I'm just trying to think, is there maybe a transitional time that would be beneficial for us as well? Has that been considered at all or thought about?
So the next step is to have those types of conversations with the candidate.
Okay. So Chuck, would you be okay if I amended the motion and said and added the words "or earlier" as determined by central administration staff?
Tom, I don't think that piece is necessary for the
No?
candidate to start. No.
Yeah, I mean,
Because the candidate is currently at the central office in Stoneham and is going to have to also wrap up things there. And Stoneham is obviously going to have to now, you know, figure out what they're going to do for their positions. So I don't think the person would be starting earlier.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, the other thing, Tom, and yeah, just thinking on the fly here, her contract wouldn't take place and become effective until July 1st. So we would have to do something else to have her start early. And I don't know whether, you know, when she's already still under contract in Stoneham, it's probably not feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the still under contract in Stoneham is the challenge, right? I mean, we could write the contract to start whenever time we wanted to internally if we wanted to, if she didn't already have something else. But I'll take that, and that's fine. I just wanted to. I'm eager to get us, you know, moving forward and get the team able to work together as much as possible. So, but I take the feedback, and that's fine.
Okay. Okay, we're ready for a vote on the motion. Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Aaron?
Aye.
And Chuck, aye. Thank you, Dr. Doherty.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we have the Joshua Eaton principal timeline.
Actually, I don't need a slide for this one. In your packet is the timeline for the Joshua Eaton principal search, where this has been the first opportunity, because we haven't met since April 15th as a committee. We have already moved forward so that with the process so that we could start attracting candidates and building the screening committee. So in your packet, you do see the makeup of the process. It's very similar to the Birch Meadow process. We have a combination of administrators, teachers, staff members. The school secretary is involved in this, as well as parents. And so one of the things that I think is important, and we have already discussed this with the screening committee, is that we are currently running another search, which is the Birch Meadow search. And we want to make sure that in this competitive market, which it is right now, that we maximize the candidates that we have for not only the Birch Meadow search, but for the Eaton search. So it is possible that this timeline may be accelerated a little bit to match the depth of the process and the quality of the candidates. As you know, we've already announced the 3 finalists for Birch Meadow. We have 3 very strong candidates. We're going through a similar process with them right now. We just completed the open microphone. We are now doing the reference checks, and you know, we're coming to realize that we have 3 very strong finalists. So we want to make sure that we don't lose any of these candidates as well. So it is possible that the screening committee, who we have already met with, may be starting a little bit earlier than is on this timeline. So other than that, that would be the only possibility with this search.
Great, thank you. Aaron?
I was just wondering, I just want to clarify what you were just saying. So presumably one of the 3 finalists for Birch Meadow will be selected as the best fit for Birch Meadow. Are you saying that the other 2 could be interviewed by the Joshua Eaton Screening Committee, or would you bypass the screening committee?
No, they would be interviewed by the Joshua Eaton Screening Committee, but the timing is everything, Aaron. That's why we want to make sure we maximize the pool of candidates. A lot of the candidates applied for both positions.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure that the Joshua Eaton Screening Committee would still have a role in it, but I absolutely understand the need to possibly expedite things. So I just wanted to clarify.
We definitely want the screening committee to have a voice. That we're not dismissing that. We're not diminishing that role. We think that every elementary school has its own unique community, and their voice needs to be heard, just like the Birch Meadow community. But we also realize that we have strong candidates here that we don't want to lose.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Okay, we didn't have a motion on that.
Yeah, so the motion is move to approve the Joshua Eaton principal search process as presented.
Second.
Second by Carla. Any other discussion? Aaron? Oh, Carla, go ahead, sorry.
Dr. Doherty, I love the way that you guys are thinking about potentially accelerating a little bit to keep that candidate pool still in town. So thank you.
Okay, we're ready for the vote. Carla?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, thank you, Dr. Doherty. Okay, we have special education update from Dr. Stiles and her staff as well.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. We are really excited to be presenting an update to all of you. You're going to be hearing from myself, Allison Stryker, who is the coordinator for humanities, and Allison Wright, who's the director of special education. And one of the most important things for us is that you see that we are working together, because this truly is a collaboration between special education and general education to make sure we're doing the best for all students. So back in October of 2018, Chapter 222 was enacted, and it actually took effect in January of 2019. And what that said was that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education had to work with the Department of Early Education and Care to issue guidelines to assist districts in developing screening procedures to identify students who could have an indicator of a neurological learning disability, one of those being dyslexia. And so that guidance was finally issued in 2021, just back in April. So back in 2018, it was on DESE to issue something, and they just did. And when we received it, we were thrilled because we were able to really dig in and see all of the work that we've been doing was really highlighted in the guidance. And that's what we wanted to share with you today. There'll be many more opportunities to review the guidance in depth, but we wanted to just let people know it's out there and explain the work we're doing to meeting all of the different components of the guidance. So the purpose of these guidelines, and it's very important to note that these are guidelines, not regulations. Regulations would have a timeline for implementation. These guidelines are a way for districts to really have a roadmap to plan out what they need, and it's strongly suggested that things are incorporated into the district's plan, the district's strategic plan, which Reading has already started to do. And they're also suggesting that a lot of this work is going to take 3 to 5 years. And so when you look at these guidelines, they're saying that we need to have screenings for all students. And it's really focusing on kindergarten through 2nd grade. However, they do talk about what we need to be doing at the preschool level. What they also did was provide an intervention for frameworks. So students who are having learning disabilities need to really receive timely and responsive intervention to ensure that they are making progress. And they suggest that that intervention is evidence-based and high-quality instruction, and they give a lot of suggestions of how to implement that. They also, one of the things that DESE did was they went above and beyond and really linked all of the evidence-based practices with their other DESE guidance, which is really nice. So when you look at the guidance itself, you actually can do the hot links right to the other guidance. And so a lot of what they are really focusing on is making sure there is equitable and immediate access for reading support. We should not be waiting for students to fail or qualify for special education to receive support. This is intended to really identify students who are struggling readers as soon as possible and provide them with appropriate interventions. And it's for all students. And what they're doing is making sure that we are addressing that risk of dyslexia early and doing it right in general education. And that all of the practices for these students are really key concepts for districts to use. And they need to be evidence-based practices. Data needs to be collected. They are suggesting structures for data teams and different levels of support, much of which Reading has already begun to address. And again, it's all integrated.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jen. I think when we're thinking about all of these new guidelines and what they mean for us, my sort of thinking and planning ahead, it helps me to frame my thinking. So these are my 4 almost buckets, or umbrellas, if you want to call them, of the things that, the goals that I'm setting for myself and for my team, the things that I want to collaborate with principals on, with Dr. Stice. So these are the 4 buckets, if you will, that I'm sort of using to drive my thinking and my planning and my collaboration with the student services team. So collaboration and alignment, consistency, communication, assessment and intervention, and then of course professional learning.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is already in place. So we have been continuing our work with Adam Hickey, and he's from Landmark Outreach. We've been focusing a lot of this work at the middle and the high school level. And this work is really focusing on the accommodations and supports for all students within the inclusion setting. We've been continuing our work with Melissa Orkin and Leandra Ellion from Crafting Minds. They have been providing training for starting last June, and we've continued that this year, and really focusing on literacy and assessment around literacy. By the end of the year, our goal is to have all of our team chairs, our school psychologists, our special education teachers, our speech and language pathologists, all trained with Crafting Minds. We have the book Equipped for Reading Success by David Kilpatrick. We have purchased a couple copies of this book for each of our schools, and this book really focuses on phonemic awareness and fluent word recognition. This is something that was incorporated into the training with Melissa Orkin and Crafting Minds as well. We've begun some work with Michael McSheehan from Evolve in Effect LLC, and he's been facilitating a group of elementary general ed and special education teachers and administrators, really looking closely at our MTSS process. We have developed a district literacy goal in our district improvement plan, and we have included that new literacy support position for next year. We continue to meet with DESE and all their stakeholders across the state. We meet every couple of weeks with DESE. And I don't know, Allison, do you want to talk any about the last one?
Yeah, that's kind of the same for the general ed side too, right? Connecting very frequently with not only DESE, but other literacy leaders, people who have similar roles to mine in lots of local districts across the state. So really making sure that I have the most up-to-date knowledge and that I'm sharing that, the general ed side perspective, any information that I'm getting with Dr. Stice and with Allison, because believe it or not, we sometimes get different information. And so the last bullet we did this year, the screening guidelines were released by DESE in the fall of 2020, and we, as you know, we've talked about this before, we were ready for that. And so this school year we used Lexia Rapid for K and 1 and iStation for grades 2 through 5, both of which are on the DESE guidelines approved list.
So what else is scheduled or recently added? We are working on developing or having some additional trainings in RAVO, Project Read, Foundations, and Language Live. Some of those, RAVO is also going to be working with Crafting Minds. Additional training, so we did meet collaboratively with CPAC and the Reading and Reading Subcommittee to provide some reading trainings to parents. We are in the process of planning the next part of that series of the reading training with CPAC. We created a book list also in collaboration with CPAC and the Reading and Reading Subcommittee that outlines a lot of books that are good resources for parents and to learn more about literacy. We have had a series of different trainings that we have reached out to our early childhood partners. We also have some of our early childhood partners attending our workshop with Crafting Minds in June, so that's exciting to have them part of that as well. The graphic organizer for literacy evaluations is part of the Crafting Minds course that the teachers have all been taking this year, and we are working to utilize this graphic organizer to help with our literacy evaluations consistently across the district. The graphic organizer really helps to analyze the evaluation results and determine the best intervention that the student requires based on the evaluation data. And I think, Allison, you can take the last 3 bullets.
So we are working on the summer programming for students at risk in K2, and that's a collaborative effort with our our extended day, right, Dr. Stice? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's actually going to run the same 5 weeks as our ESY program, and we are working together to make sure that we are targeting students who are at risk based on our screenings.
And then, so one of our new curriculum tools next year will be the Haggerty Phonemic Awareness curriculum, and that will be for pre-K to 2 as well as the available tools, the kits for intervention. And then I will be overseeing sort of the review and alignment of our response, our protocols in and around the Tier 2 intervention. So in a collaboration with the reading specialists, the elementary principals, really taking some next steps to map out exactly what kinds of interventions will happen, similar to what they're doing on the special ed side with their programming. I'll be doing for Tier 2.
And then the last part is what's planned and what's happening soon. So Jen was talking about the dyslexia guidance that was released from the state. We are working on trying to provide this guidance in a digestible format for everybody. So we are breaking it down based on the chapters and creating a PowerPoint slide that will break down all the information in an easy format. We're going to be, they're going to be narrated, and then we're going to post them on the student service website for the staff and the community to view. We will be doing a training for reading in the brain for all new staff during orientation. We have orientation prior to the start of the school year, so we will be ensuring that we include that in the orientation process. We're working on a training on helping working with the school psychologist in learning more about the reading and the interventions based on that graphic organizer. So we're going to be working on that next year. We're going to be doing training on evaluation and reading interventions for all the new special education staff as well as they come through that orientation in the fall. We're going to continue to develop the MTSS model and SST supports, and that's really being driven by some of the work that we're doing with Michael McSheehan. And then I think, Allison, you can talk about the last ones.
Yes, so, yep, those aren't my bullets, but I will talk about them. I just don't want to say, I don't want to misspeak, but one thing that actually could have been on the last slide that I just wrapped up doing was Keys to Beginning Reading Facilitator training. So Keys to Literacy is a well-known literacy consultant company in Massachusetts that collaborates with DESE quite often. And so they have a course that's much like a graduate course, 36 hours. And what they offered was a train the trainer sort of model. So now I am licensed to teach that course and bring it to Reading's teachers. So it's a hybrid course, part online, asynchronous, and then part facilitated with me. So I'm making plans for what that might look like when we bring it either in the summer or the fall. And I'll go back a little bit to the assessment piece and especially the screener. And so I actually just today met with a representative from Early Bird, which is a screener created by Dr. Nadine Gaab, who's very well known in the fields of dyslexia and early literacy. So in the sort of effort to find the best tool that will work for us, I'm really looking at all of our options, consulting with our teachers, because we want to find the balance between a quality screener that gives us good information while being efficient and not taking too much instructional time away from our teachers. So that's all happening too.
And then I will just add one more thing, that for the literacy instruction to be included as part of our program reviews. So as we're going through and doing our program reviews over the next couple of years, we will be ensuring that we're looking at literacy across all of our programs.
And then I think for all of us, as you can see, this is a very coordinated approach, and we are going to really continue to review our screening tools for their efficiency and effectiveness. I know that Allison Stryker is going to be presenting a 5,000-foot view of some of the data when curriculum does their presentation in June. And we're really going to be continuing to look at our professional development, because so much of this research and work has changed since many of our teachers have graduated from college. And so things like, we are supposed to use the term dyslexia. What does it mean? How do we use it? That is something that we need to make sure we are training our teachers in. Another piece that is really kind of new information from when many teachers, including myself, graduated from school, is really around how do you teach fluency and sight words. And so we are really working together to make sure that the teachers have the understanding of what has changed based on the brain research and how we adjust our instructional practices. And we're really working with the building leaders as we think about what is MTSS and how do we use multi-tiered systems of supports in all of our buildings, making sure students have access to really strong tier 1 instruction and then all of the guided supports. We're also going to be updating our DCAP and continuing to look at our district goals and make sure we are in alignment with the guidance that's just been released. But as you can see, we've really got a good jump start on all of the work the state has just kind of charged us with. So we are more than happy to answer any questions. And again, this was just meant to be an overview of what the guidance is and what we're doing, and especially with those videos that will be coming out for each chapter, we will be giving more in-depth information to the community.
I'll just say one more thing. Oops, sorry, Dr. Seiss. I don't know how this didn't get on the slides, but we are also, as many of you may know, that Foundations is our core phonics curriculum for grades K to 3. And since my tenure here, this is my 3rd year, I've sort of come to realize that it's in various states of use across all of our elementary buildings across K through 3. So we're really making an investment and a commitment to shoring up the fidelity and the usage of that program, because it is so well respected, and it is such a core part of those foundational skills that we know that our students need. And so that's a big project that I'm working on currently, making sure all of our teachers K through 3 have the necessary materials, both instructional materials and student materials. So we also have professional development for our teachers, like we're calling it a refresher or a revisit, so that we make sure everyone is on the same page. That's going to happen this year, and then more in-depth planning for some level-specific PD moving forward. So all that is all in the works as well.
Thank you, Allison, Jen, and Allison. So we can open it up to the committee now with any questions. Sarah?
Sorry, I was trying to mute there. Thank you for that update. Just a couple of points of clarification I might have missed. So you guys definitely presented a lot of information. The Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Program, did you say that that's going to be implemented across the district in the fall for K to 2? Okay, so that will be happening in all of the classrooms.
Actually, Sarah, pre-K to
2. Okay.
Great minds, Allison.
We've been doing that all day.
Awesome. And I think you mentioned that you'll be providing an update on the findings of the literacy screener and dyslexia screener in the curriculum update in June at our school committee meeting.
That's something that I was, Dr. Dory and I were in the midst of talking about, so I'd have to follow up with him on that.
Okay, great. And the last piece I had as well, perhaps, I don't know the timing of this, but the mapping of the tier 2 interventions to tools and curricula, that's something we could also get an update on in June, or I'm not sure what the timing was for completing that exercise.
I don't think I'd be prepared to share that in June, but we're just in the early stages of that that project. But certainly the fall, I would expect.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Sure.
Sean?
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks to all three of you for the presentation. Obviously, there's a lot going on there, and it's good to see how kind of well coordinated the response has been. My question is just whether or not you feel like you have kind of the resources that you need to respond effectively. Is there anything that you need from us to support you better in this space?
Thank you, Sean. I'll start, and Allison, if you want to jump in. Honestly, we have been working very closely with Dr. Doherty and Ms. Dowd around getting the funding to ensure we have what we need. Today, we were going through making sure that our preschool staff had training on the Haggerty and all of the screenings that they're going to be doing. So I really do feel like the district is embracing this work and supporting us in any way possible.
Thank you. Carla?
I was kind of thinking along the lines similar to what Sean was saying. Thank you for the coordinated effort. It seems like a huge undertaking, and we really appreciate it. And I was thinking of along those same lines of what you would need, but does the state provide funding for this?
No, the state is not providing funding, but lots of resources and links. But again, you know, CPA Dowd has been great in helping us identify resources, and the state did actually reinstate the 274 grant this year, which is a professional development grant. And so in student services, we decided to spend half the money on SEL training. We're doing a ton for our social workers and psychologists and behavioral health staff and nurses. And the rest of that money we've invested in making sure there's been the Project Retraining, the RAVO training, and all of the materials. So I do think we've been very strategic about ensuring we have what we need to help the staff move forward with it.
And DESE has offered a few grants related to early literacy specifically, especially around curriculum and assessment. But, you know, we are typically, unfortunately, not qualified to apply in many cases. So those are things that I actually shouldn't. Yeah, those are things that I'm keeping on top of too. So any grant that we do find ourselves eligible for, we're asking for.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Tom?
I'm just going to echo the thanks, and I love seeing the coordination as well. I'll also say this, what you ladies are working on and the way this is presenting is cutting edge, frankly. It's knowing friends from multiple districts, they would love to have this conversation and this presentation at their school committee meeting. They'd be begging for it. So I thank you that you're working through that in such a fashion. I have a plethora of questions, as one might imagine. But before I ask mine, there's a question in the Q&A as well from a parent. And that's Monica Flaherty of Grove Street, who says, when the K through 2 is mentioned for summer programming, is this for current grade 2 students who missed out on many of the fundamentals over the closure hybrid timeframe, or is this for general is this for general education students? So Chuck, if you're okay with that being answered, that would be great.
Jen, did you want to?
Yep, I was actually just looking. I know Dr. Doherty popped up. I wasn't sure if he was going to answer.
No, Jen, you could start and I can fill in if there's any.
Yep, so this is actually going to be offered to general education students who have demonstrated some weaknesses. However, students who do receive special education are also going to be eligible for it. We're looking at the screening results. It is different than ESY. And what we are talking about are the rising students for kindergarten, first grade, and second grade at this point. However, Dr. Doherty's been working with the principals to offer additional supports at all of the other grade levels as well.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I do think that parent population, I hear from it quite a bit in that current second grade, rising third grade. Would very much appreciate some more reach out and support in that space. So I'm glad to hear that you're already doing that with the principals and whatnot. So thank you. I actually had a 45-minute conversation with a parent today on that type of topic and sent them back to that kind of conversation as well. So I would echo Sarah's request to, and I think Dr. Doherty, you and I have talked about this already, to see some of the data from the Dyslexia screening and the iStation screening. As part of the upcoming presentation, so we can see, anonymized, how things are going, what are we seeing, what is the screening actually showing us, if anything, and I'm sure it's showing us something, right? And then what are we actioning as a result? And obviously one of the actions is the grant that we approved last month, and the training and the classroom or it's not extended summer, the summer school offering that's going to go in place for the K through 2 that we just got done talking about. So if we can see more of that as part of that presentation, that would be very much appreciated. So that's a request, I guess.
So if I can answer that. So Courtney Fogarty, Allison Straker, and I have already met and talked about this. The due date for the third screening is June 1st, I believe, Allison?
Yes.
So
at the end of I think it's the end of May.
So
the very last day of May.
We're going to take a look at the data after that due date to see what we could do in a presentable format that would be easy to understand.
Okay, thank you. And I loved seeing all the training that was in the presentation as well. I think I lost count with the various different things that were being trained. And one of the things I was noticing was the reading and the brain training for new hires. And then I think you sort of referred to kind of helping and brain training on for existing staff as well, but are we doing the reading and the brain training for the rest of the staff, or have they already been trained in that? How do we close that gap if they have not been?
So that's a great question. It is actually something we are working on, figuring out how do we expand with our existing staff, but we definitely have a captured audience with all of our new staff. So we wanted to start there. And we have opened up the Crafting Minds training. Not only do we have our community partners joining us, we've also had the literacy specialists have been trained. We've offered it to the principals, and we've actually opened it up to some general education staff as well for the remaining seats for our summer session. So that will be expanding work during next year.
Right, and I would add to that in this particular area for all the teachers that we currently have, it's the type of training that we need to really differentiate, so that we want to be able to create a few different pathways for teachers to sort of solidify their knowledge, because we do have such various levels of background, of training, of experience. And so we're thinking that through with the different courses that was part of the impetus to take that Keys to Literacy training. And so, yeah, really thinking through a few different ways that teachers can solidify their knowledge about foundational skills.
Great. That's and I love the fact that the differentiation is coming into play there, Allison. That is great, because as you say, everybody's there's many people at different levels, right? So just making it simple, level 1, level 2, level 3, I'm sure there's probably a couple different pathways there to which go through. The keys to reading, beginning reading was another one of my questions. And one of the ones I'm more familiar with would be letters training. So how would you compare or contrast keys to reading versus letters, and cost-wise versus benefit versus depth of knowledge that comes through those appropriately?
So great question. It actually, the creator, the founder of Keys to Literacy, Joan Sedita, was a former letters trainer herself. And so she described Keys to Beginning Reading as letters light, she calls it. And I think, I almost think that that's, a little unfair, because I do think that the Keys to Beginning Reading goes very in depth. I, as a facilitator, it was 3 full days in a row, and this is my background, and even for me, it was, and the group of us were like, whoa, this is a lot. So to me, for a general education teacher, this would certainly give them a strong foundation. I think letters, I'm not sure how to, I think it's a little more technical, maybe would be the word, where Keys to Beginning Reading tries to really build the knowledge base, but also to stay practical. So letters doesn't have as much of the teaching component, like how does this translate to the classroom, where I think that's where Keys is strong.
So Keys might be a better way, maybe a way to summarize it is it's a better research to practice tool than letters might just be more of the research background?
Well, yeah, I mean, in my opinion.
Okay, well, that's a valuable opinion, so
yeah.
Thank you. I have a few more questions or clarification points. You mentioned the graphic organizer. That's, I believe, the Orkin graphic organizer. And I just wanted to clarify. My understanding of that is it's only used for a special education evaluation. It's not used as part of any Lexia results or anything else like that. So it's only as part of a full evaluation from a special education perspective. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. That graphic organizer is just for that.
And that final bullet there that I added that Ms. McLaughlin asked about, that's my next project to tackle, is to create something in that same spirit to apply to our Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. So before special ed is even involved, here are the other, here's the other pathways that we follow when we see these types of results.
Okay. Which is a perfect foray to my next question, which was MTSS and the work there, right? Traditionally or historically or in the literature, maybe in a biased way, MTSS is viewed by many as a path, a wait to fail model, as opposed to a build up and support model. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. From an intent perspective, but how do we work, and maybe it is that graphic organizer concept, Ms. Stryker, you're talking about, how do we work to make sure that that's not viewed as a path to failure, but a path to success? And is it bolstering it up with the additional supports that are necessary, the filling out the ECORI related information that's necessary? How do we close that gap or improve that understanding?
So I can tell you that the guidance actually has Chapter 5 is about the role of MTSS in the dyslexia screening process, and really about providing that appropriate instruction. There are actually several chapters that capture it, but they really do talk about the need for that universal screening, having a strong assessment cycle where we are taking the screening data, we are providing evidence-based interventions, we are then coming back as data teams and adjusting that instruction, and then if we need to, we're doing it again. And they talk a lot about using that evidence-based Tier 1 instruction really to reduce referrals, because a strong Tier 1 instruction with Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports should really help students before they need special education, knowing that your brain is wired for reading well before you come into reading. And so I know you know this, Mr. Wise, but for a lot of people, the research is that your brain comes in and a cup is a cup no matter which way you turn it. All of a sudden, we're introducing letters, and a B, a D, a P, and a Q all look the same, but if you turn it differently, it's a different letter, different meaning, different sound. And reading is completely complex, and the state is actually telling us These are the subtests you need to test on, or the subset skills you need to test 3 times a year, 2 times a year, and then these are the matching interventions. So they are not prescriptive in this is the intervention you have to use. They are saying there needs to be interventions and here's a list to choose from. So I really think this whole dyslexia guidance is that shift you're talking about. And they actually talk about not waiting for the wait to fail model. There is a whole section on that in the guidance.
That was a layup for you. Thank you. So I'll just say it again. I think it's phenomenal work that you all are doing here. Obviously, it's very nice to see the dyslexia guidelines come out from DESE finally as well, and the teams that worked on that, the people that worked on that, you know, they did a lot of work to make that as digestible as it was, and you guys are going to make it even more digestible. So thank you for that. And I just want to, one final thing, and just say thank you for bringing Haggerty in as well. It closes a gap. We didn't have anything from an phonemic awareness perspective, so I very much appreciate that we were able to squeeze that in as well and work that into the model. So thank you for all the work here. Chuck's on mute, but I think he's trying to say Aaron. He's probably trying to say, Tom, you're finally done. Aaron, it's your turn.
I'm sorry. Aaron. I was saying Aaron. Thank you. Trying to be diligent about myself on mute.
That's quite a lead up, Tom. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate this presentation, how much I appreciate the monumental work that you are undergoing. I really value that you're willing to reflect on current practices and how to build and improve and evolve. And, you know, I've been hearing about a lot of this through our CPAC meetings, but I'm so grateful that everyone else is now hearing and learning about all the exciting work that you have going on. So it's mainly just a note of appreciation. So thank you all.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, thanks again, Jen, Allison, and Allison. Really appreciate it. Great presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Okay, the spring update.
Okay. Thought we would change from flowers to cats for our spring update. So now we are fully back in person. We have a very small population of students in K-12 that are still remote, but it is a very small population. So I want to thank everyone who has made this transition back over the last month and a half possible. Obviously, it starts with our principals, our teachers, our paraeducators, our secretaries, custodians, food service. It just, the list goes on and on and on. So we really appreciate everything that everyone has done to get to the point that we were actually a year and a half ago. So thank you for that. Want to start off, as I have been the last several meetings with my updates with health and safety. We are seeing an uptick in positive cases, and an interesting thing that is starting to happen is that the ages are starting to get pushed down to the younger ages. So right now, our juniors and seniors are getting more and more vaccinated, and I'll show you a little bit later that number is now over 500 that have had at least one shot. But we're starting to see middle school and freshmen and sophomores and elementary, our cases are ticking up. As spring is now out there and people are becoming more active. I think that's contributing to this as well. But you can see over the last week and actually today, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, we have seen more positive cases and more quarantining going on. So this week, the big positive cases that happened, and we had to report as a state epidemic event, was through our pooled testing. We had identified several students from the girls track team and accompanied students who tested positive. As a result, 45 students have been quarantined. At first, we identified more students, but because they've been fully vaccinated, they are not required to be quarantined. Today, we had 3 positive cases. One was a positive pool at Wood End, resulting in 22 students quarantined. One at Parker with 6 students quarantined, and one at Eaton with 13 students quarantined. So we are seeing, as I said, an uptick in the younger students, or students that have not been vaccinated in the older grades yet. The totals, as you can see here, as of today, and its accompaniment, the quarantine in school cases. The asterisk at the high school does not include athletics quarantine, which has been the majority of our quarantine cases this year. In terms of testing, since February, when we started the testing program, we have had over 2,000 tests done, 2,000 pooled tests, 22 positive test results from those pools. This week alone, we did 489 tests. This month alone, we did 489 pools, and 6 were positive. Just as a reminder, a pool is somewhere between 5 and 10 students or staff. Some other updates that I want to talk about, and there's a lot going on in our district, a lot of positive things that are going on. You heard Dr. Stice's presentation with Allison Straker, Allison Wright. But we are also focusing on mental health, both for our students, staff, and our families. And so we have had several workshops, and they're going to continue. The next one is May 20th. Lynn Lyons will be doing a presentation on Now What? Managing Emotional Health During Uncertain Times. Tuesday, May 25th, there will be a presentation by Wendy Bowditch from North Shore Education Consortium on stress, resilience, and self-care. And then Friday, May 28th, we, as part of our Professional Development Day, we are also going to have Lynn Lyons come in for staff. So there's a lot going on in the training piece. We've also had some training on mindfulness in the brain. This flyer will be sent out this week as part of our, and we have been communicating this, but it will be sent out this week in our updates.
So, John, it looks like Tom had a question.
Sure.
So I guess, first of all, John, on this last topic, thank you, and thank the staff and whoever else is involved in putting these things together. Obviously, the town, from a town meeting perspective, thought this was a very important topic as well. And you publishing it in your, weekly letter is a very good distribution mechanism that meets all the parents of RPS. But is it possible that we could ask Mr. LaLasher or somebody else to make these available as well via the town website so that it's more publicized even outside of RPS?
Sure. We can certainly send that to Jane Wollerman. She manages the website for the town, so we can do that.
Okay. And I had one more question on a previous slide, if you don't mind. The definition of state epidemic event. I'll just try to quickly look at what that was, and could you give us a quick definition of what that is?
I believe it when it surpasses a certain number of positive cases for a particular situation, and I want to say 5, when it surpasses a certain amount for quarantine.
Okay. Thank you.
This is just a little bit more on Wendy Bowditch's presentation on stress, resilience, and self-care on Tuesday, May 25th. Again, we will be sending this flyer out. I also, and maybe Jen, you want to talk about this slide since this is your office hours?
Sure. Allison and I have been offering office hours all year. We found them very helpful. They are open to parents, staff, the community. We send out a link and you just sign up, and Alice and I are available to answer questions, to problem solve, to hear concerns, or to hear good things. We just want to make sure that we are continuing to reach out to the community and making sure that we are on top of any issues, concerns, or things that are going well.
Thanks, Jen. I want to talk a little bit about guidelines. As you know, today the CDC is continuing to relax some of the health mandates. Unfortunately, DPH and DESE have not yet. And MIAA has also not. So we're going to continue to follow the DESE DPH guidelines until we get more guidance. You know, we have to remember that the population that we work with every single day is still not vaccinated. The majority of our students are still not vaccinated. So we have to be very careful with this and, you know, make sure that we're still following the 3 to 6 physical distancing, the mask wearing, all of those different precautions. So once we get further guidance from DESE, we will follow those guidelines and relax them. But MIAA just sent this out yesterday, and I know that they're going to be meeting soon about this. But the mandatory facial coverings for all sports are going to continue. During active play. This is going to be reviewed soon. Participants for all sports must wear facial coverings on the bench, sidelines, start finish lines, etc. The indoor spectator capacity limits are still staying at the 50%. And then they talk a little bit about transportation, which we have been starting to follow, and the contact tracing piece obviously will continue as well. So I know people are eager to get back to as much of a normal life as possible, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that we still have a population that has not been vaccinated. And our numbers are showing that they are still turning positive on a regular basis, as the numbers are showing. I don't know why I'm stuck. There we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about meal distribution, and then I'm going to turn it over to Gail, who's going to talk a little bit about the data. So, as you know, since last March of 2020, we've had a very successful meal distribution program. We continue to advertise it on a regular basis. As more and more students are coming back, we are still finding a population. There is still a need there. And so this is going to continue through June of 2022. We continue to, up until June of this year, we will continue to do meal distribution from Wednesdays 2:30 to 3:30 and Fridays from 11 to 12. Students, it's open to any family with children ages 0 to 22. And we provide 7 breakfast and 7 lunch, and an assortment of fruits and vegetables for each child. So families drive up to the bridge next to the Hawks Fieldhouse. Usually there's a placard with the number, and then we just provide the food there. So It's been very successful. Our school resource officers have been involved, as well as the members of the Reading Fire Department. So this has really been a very successful program. So Gail's now going to talk a little bit about how the data has been working on this.
Great. And the first, just to go back a couple of items to let folks know that we're also very fortunate. A lot of the information that Dr. Stice and Dr. Doherty were talking about with the mental health and the mindfulness, we are very fortunate. We're actually utilizing a lot of the state COVID funding to pay for a lot of that activity. And we have been coordinating with the coalition as well as our folks here. So we are definitely tapping into all of our various resources that we have. So just to give folks a little bit of an update on that, we are utilizing the majority of our grant funding for a lot of those one-time events that we're doing. As far as the food distribution, we would have had Danielle Collins here tonight, but I'm happy to say that she's actually being interviewed, which might be done by now, by RCTV. Some of the segments that I think Sherry Vanderaken is actually working on to do interviews with folks. So she is actually doing a segment that will be airing shortly about what we've been doing throughout the pandemic. And by we, I definitely mean Danielle. She has definitely done a tremendous amount of work in this area. As we did want to provide a quick update to folks, as you can see, as we've started to shift to more kids coming back to school full time now that actually all of the grades are back, we are starting to see a shift from our meal distributions to meals served in schools, which is what we would have expected to see. But we are continuing to let folks know that the meal distribution itself is continuing twice a week. And Danielle and I have met, and we have made the determination, since the funding is still available, we are going to continue it throughout the summer. So once school ends in mid-June, we will move to doing the food distribution once a week on Tuesdays under the bridge at the high school. It was incredibly popular and successful last summer. So we do feel that it's important, as families start to come out of and recover from the pandemic, that we still provide them a source of nutritious meals for families. We continue to work with St. Vincent's as well as the food pantry to make sure that we're connecting all of the various resources we have. So we'll be providing more information in the upcoming weeks about the dates and times. But right now we plan to do the food distribution through July and August, once a week, most likely on Tuesdays at the high school, as we did last summer. So we'll continue to provide updates as we go. We're continuing to secure as much grant funding as we can, but this program itself has been incredibly successful. We are purchasing some new equipment for a couple of the schools to allow us to store more food so that we can continue to provide the fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, as well as the meals to the family. So hopefully over the summer, we'll be able to have Danielle come back to give a little bit more of an update as to how it's going. So this is just a quick summary to show how much we've been doing. So this is a little over a year. This is from March 13th last year through April 30th this year, to show how many meals we have been able to serve through this program. And again, the great news is that the government has provided funding throughout next year as well. So we think that'll be incredibly helpful for families.
Thank you, Gail. Some other updates. I believe you saw an email from Tara Herlihy about the Special Olympics. Even though Malden is not holding the regional Special Olympics this year, Tara Herlihy and other special education staff really want to continue this for Reading students. So we have penciled in, weather permitting, June 11th. It will be from 9 to 12. It will be held on the RMHS Turf 1 and track. There'll be students from the different schools that will be participating. And we do have a rain date, which slipped my mind right now, but it will be the following week. So we are very excited about this. We're very excited that our staff want to do this. I want to thank Tara Hurley for organizing this and putting it all together. It's going to be a great event. And if you are available, we encourage you to come down. I also want to report out some good news from DESE. We received this, I believe it was yesterday, that Reading meets the requirements for special education. It's the highest level that you can achieve. So annually, the department must identify each school district specific needs for technical assistance or intervention in the area of special ed. There are different categories. One is meets the requirements, needs assistance, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. What they take a look at to determine is they use a rubric that looks at the different categories, which includes your 5-year cohort, graduation rate for students with disabilities, the annual dropout rate for students with disabilities, public school monitoring special education compliance data, problem resolution system, special ed complaint data, performance on special ed state performance plan and the annual performance report indicators, and data and findings of significant disproportionality. So I'm pleased to say that we are in the highest category, which is meets requirements. Again, it is due to the hard work of Dr. Stice, Allison Wright, the team chairs, the special education teachers and related service providers, special education para-educators. It's truly a team effort, but a lot of hard work went into this. And you saw from the presentation earlier this evening, the collaboration between special education and regular education. So that's some good news from DESE that I wanted to report out. Some search updates. We talked about the assistant superintendent earlier this evening. We are in process with the HR director search. We have had a few interviews already. The Reading Memorial High School principal, Kevin Tracy, which I believe we reported out a month ago when the last time we met. As you know, which we announced earlier this weekend, Birch Meadow principal, we have 3 finalists, Jessica Ikomu, Scarlett Grant, Caitlin Shelburne. We are in the final stages of this process, doing reference checks through our networks. We did hold the 2 open microphone sessions and the one-on-one interviews earlier this week. So we hopefully will be making an announcement sometime next week on that search. You approved the timeline for Joshua Eaton, and we discussed that earlier this evening. The Parker assistant principal has been hired as well. That's Jay Pelledge. Jay is actually a Reading resident and currently is in the Lincoln School District, and he will be joining us on July 1st. And the MECO director interviews are tomorrow, first round, and so that one is in process as well. So those are all the updates on the searches. And just a couple of other things. So the statement of interest, which you approved at the last meeting to move forward with that, we are looking at an approval at the May 27th school committee meeting. We are currently putting the finishing touches on that, and we'll be sharing that with you. It then would go to the select board. That will be happening on June 1st. That is going to be a joint meeting. It will include the green vehicles presentation, in which you will be taking a vote. We don't have many vehicles on the school department side, but school committee will be taking a vote on that process. Select board will be approving the post agreement with Wakefield. You'll be getting a security update from Joe Huggins and the consultant, and the select board will be approving the statement of interest that we we'll be presenting to you on the 27th. I want to give some thank yous. Last evening, no, actually it was Tuesday evening, sorry. The week is kind of meshing all together. We had 4 Reading Public School staff who presented at the monthly CPAC meeting. Linda Boyages, Cassie Bolyard, Ari Musselman, and Ann Corwin. They did an amazing job talking about the progress report process, and the enthusiasm and passion and expertise was evident, very evident. We are very fortunate to have teachers like this in our school district. So I wanted to give a special thank you to these 4 staff members for their presentation the other night at the CPAC meeting. And my favorite part, the students. So we're going to start first with Barrows. This was their annual walk to school, bike to school with families. You can see this is Officer Batcher, who seemed to be all over the place lately. You're going to see some other pictures of him shortly. Greeting students as they were walking to school with their families. And we also today had our kindergarten students walk to the Woburn Street Fire Station, where they learned all about fire safety. And so they took a walk, beautiful day for it. You could see here all with their masks on and walking the same trail. And my understanding is the PTO along the way, along the sidewalks, had some nice chalk sayings and directions for the students to follow on the way to the fire station to have fun. And our students came back from the fire station experience with their fire chief hats. You can see that we have all future Chief Burns here coming. And then we go to Parker Middle School, where Parker Middle School was creating and launching rockets as part of one of their science projects. You can see some students here getting the rocket ready to launch. And then there's one, I don't know if you could see it, it's great photography. I don't know who took it, maybe Ms. Shanklin. You can see a rocket in the background there in the air. I am now going to turn the next piece over to Gail, who had a great experience today at Killam.
Great, thank you. So we are very happy to have been able to relaunch the police serving lunch at the elementary schools. Today was actually our 3rd elementary school. We have done Barrows 2 weeks ago. We did Joshua Eaton last week, and we did Killam today. So we actually pick surprise dates. We actually do not let the students know when we're coming, and it actually has been great. We've had a different crew of folks come in and help serve the lunches. Each school is set up completely different. As you can see, some of them we actually serve the meals out in the cafeteria, some we're doing within the kitchen. We go between the cafeteria and the gymnasiums, and it has been great because several of the police officers who have helped us out actually have students in the schools, and it was great today. I will say one of the officers who was with us did not tell his son that he was going to be at the school, and the expression on his son's face when he came through the line and saw his dad handing him his lunch was absolutely priceless. So Officer Kristen O'Shaughnessy and Danielle Collins have been amazing getting this all coordinated in a really short amount of time. As soon as we knew the elementary schools were coming back, we worked really hard to schedule dates for them. So it's fun to see how excited the students are. And we are told they are extremely well behaved on these days when we have the police serving lunches. So we're really excited to partner with the police department, and we hope to continue this throughout the rest of this year and into next year, and hopefully we'll be able to expand it to the middle schools at some point next year.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Doherty, Gail, Jen, everybody. Does just open it up to the committee for any questions? Great job.
Thank you. Great
So,
job.
So Chuck, if it's okay, I'd like the staff to be able to leave at this point so they can enjoy the rest of the evening.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Everyone was looking forward to the policy.
Samantha and I are looking forward to it.
So we'll start with the, under the new business, the first readings of policy BID and DKC. So you want to have a motion for BID?
Move to approve the first reading of policy BID.
Second.
File BID, school committee member compensation and expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Aaron? Aaron?
Sorry, what did we vote? We're just voting on that we're going to read it?
We're waiving.
No, we're waiving the reading.
Okay, aye, sorry.
Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. So, Dr. Doherty, did you have anything to say on this one, or?
Yes, the next two policies that you're going to see, BID and DKC, are actually cross-reference policies to another policy that you did a first reading on in April, which you are not doing a second reading on tonight until you do a first reading on these. These policies do not exist right now in your policy book. So that's why you're doing them as a first reading, so that we can include them. BID is straight from the MASC recommended policy. It has been unedited.
Okay, does anybody, Sean?
Thanks, Chuck. So the only sort of reimbursable things that I can think of in the time that I've been on the committee have been MASC related events. And I think we typically, Dr. Doherty, I mean, those are paid directly by the schools. So this wouldn't apply. We don't need to go through the process of getting prior approval from the committee to do, I forget what that new member training thing is, but what it's called. But we don't need that.
Oh, charting the course.
Charting the course. Thank you. We don't need that approval from the committee because if we implement this policy, because you're paying it directly. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
This would only be if you were paying something up front and then we were reimbursing you for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that out loud and make sure we all have the same understanding. Okay.
Yeah, there has been a few instances, very few in the past, where committee members have looked for reimbursement, so on things other than the professional development. Anyone else? Okay. We'll have our first reading of.
I'm going to vote for the approval, Chuck.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, so now we have policy DKC.
So move to approve the first reading of policy DKC.
Is there a second?
Second.
File DKC, expense reimbursements.
Move to waive the
Personnel.
reading.
Second.
Okay, second. Carla?
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Chuck, aye. Okay, Dr. Doherty, do you have anything to
Yeah,
add?
thank you. Just a couple of comments. So this one is a little bit different because we were trying to adjust it to town of Reading guidelines, which for reimbursement expenses. So one is just to put in some language about timeliness. We want to make sure that that it's not turned in months later afterwards, because then if it crosses fiscal years, you have some tricky situations with having to go back to town meeting for unpaid bills, things like that. The reimbursement for mileage, we've stayed consistent with what the town has done, which is the IRS rate. So we wanted to make sure that we captured that. That's been a practice for years, and that the travel needs to be pre-approved, which has been the case. The only other piece is that in the past, well, currently what happens is when a cost center is exceeded, we would go to the school committee and ask for a cost center transfer. So that language clarified that piece of the policy.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Sean?
Can I just offer one very sort of pedantic edit to this one? The last line in the second paragraph, all staff travel needs to be pre-approved. The phrase needs to be is a little bit colloquial for a policy, so I thought maybe that should read something like all staff travel must be pre-approved.
Sure.
That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Tom?
I agree with that change. And I have one other I would like us to discuss from a practicality perspective. Hopefully we plan ahead enough to do this if we have to do a conference or something else along those lines. But the portion that says prior approval of the school committee, which is the second line of the third paragraph, I'm wondering, as we do with many other things, if it's more practical to say prior approval of the school committee chair. And just because the chair shouldn't have carte blanche, or in the case of the school committee chair travel, the prior approval of the school committee vice chair. So that we don't necessarily have to call a meeting just to approve going to a conference if we forgot to talk about it or something else along those lines, was what my proposed changes were going to be. And I can put those in the chat so it's easier for Dr. Doherty, you and Samantha to see.
Okay. Sean?
So Tom, I had a similar thought, and I talked myself out of it only because when it comes to spending money, that's a committee decision. So it felt like creating a process where we bypass the committee's role in spending money for the sake of making things easy on ourselves was. I don't know. I talked myself out of it for that reason. I don't feel that strongly about it, but I did have a similar thought to begin with.
So can I answer that, Chuck?
Sure.
So I thought about that too. And then I convinced myself this was okay because we've already approved the greater budget, right? So we're not going outside the budget. This would be in a budget line item already for us in the administrative cost center. And so we'd just be essentially allocating part of the already approved budget that we'd already voted for and already agreed to for the travel that's necessary to go to a conference that's something that we should be attending or something like that. So it's essentially, we've already approved it from a budget perspective. This is just an allocation of that money to do something that a committee member or more decides is appropriate from a conference perspective and has the approval from a timeline perspective by our first among equals chair or vice chair, as the case may be.
Yeah,
that said, I'm open to amendments, or if the group decides it's not the right thing, then that's fine. But I thought it was a practicality.
John, do we actually, I thought all we had in the school committee budget was the MASC dues. We don't have travel funds in there, do we?
No, but we do have a line item for mileage that we could access.
Well,
And
this is,
yeah,
I think,
there's not been, at least that I can remember, a time where the school committees had to do it because, as Sean said earlier, we would pre-approve for a workshop. The only thing maybe is mileage.
I'm good with your suggested edits, Tom. Your rationale makes sense to me.
anyone else? Okay, well, ready for the,
I guess one quick note for people, just in case they didn't look it up. We cannot approve any wine, liquor, or cigars as a result of this policy as well. That's what 4458 is. It's a really silly MGL law that says no city or town shall pay a bill incurred by any official thereof for wines, liquors, or cigars.
Well, if that's the case, I'm not ready for the vote then. We need to rethink it entirely.
if they smoke cigarettes, that's okay.
That's what I was thinking too. Cigarettes or a bunch of other things, who knows, but not wine, liquors, or cigars. And beer's not off limits either, so. Sorry, Chuck, I just thought that was pretty entertaining when I was reading it.
Okay, ready for the vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, now we're going into the policies that we discussed the last time.
I'm not falling into this trap again.
Yeah.
So I'm going to slightly amend the motion that is given to me. And I'm going to say, move to approve the policies as listed on the memo for Dr. Doherty dated May 13, 2021, second reading of school committee policies.
Very smart, Tom, very smart.
I think we should all refuse to second.
I was going to say the same thing.
I second.
Okay, does anybody have any
I'm going to do one more thing here because I don't want to start reading. I'm going to say, move to waive the second reading of the policies as listed on the memo from Dr. Doherty for May 13, 2021, second reading of school committee policies.
Second.
Second. Okay, any other discussion?
Chuck,
Dr.
I just want to, just one thing so that the committee is aware. I did, at the committee's request, go back to the original CBI for the MASC. That's the only policy that has been changed since the last time.
Okay.
Do we have to vote on the waiving of the readings?
Yes. Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. And Aaron, you had a question or comment?
I wanted to respond to some of the suggestions we got from Mr. Jeffrey Coram in the email.
Okay.
Can we address some of those?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So in policy BDD, there was a suggestion which I liked under the number 1 instead of they to specify the superintendent.
Tom, did you?
So I looked at that one as well. Assuming, first of all, Sean, your hand was raised. So was it on the same topic or a different one?
Nope, different one. Go for it.
I looked at that as well, and I considered it wasn't necessary because the end of the next portion of the sentence is, submitting the matter to the committee. So the they here has to be the superintendent because the committee wouldn't submit something to themselves. It doesn't really matter if we do it as the superintendent instead, but it wasn't as necessary as maybe was presented in my mind. I'm okay either way personally, but that's why I wasn't going to push that change myself.
Okay, Aaron, did you want to continue?
Yes. Is it okay that I move on to different policies?
Sure.
Because we're talking about all of them? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Chuck, just procedurally, what are we doing with this one? I mean, are we making that change and replacing the pronoun? What are we doing? I don't know I don't know if Aaron's proposing amendments and we want to vote, or we're going to do it more informally, but I don't want us to get lost, so we should probably take these one at a time and I would say out loud where we are before we move on.
Well, I mean, first of all, I will say that, we're the policy board. We're allowing public comment on policy, which we don't usually do. We're the ones that were elected to make policy. So, we'll give the leeway here, but we really got to be careful with that, because we can't have the whole community weighing in on our in policy writing. So, but I guess what we can do is kind of just go through each one of these, and I guess informally, I'd rather. I mean, we can informally put them in there, or unless the committee wants to vote on each one.
I would suggest the best practice would be we go through, amend, and vote, since this is the second reading and not the first reading.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay. Then I'm proposing an amendment that we change the word "they" to the superintendent.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Aaron?
Aye.
Aye. Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay. Did you want to go on to the next one?
I did not have anything for ACE or BBA. So if we're going in order, I don't know if anyone else did.
Anyone? No? Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I did have one for ACE. And it's maybe a cleanup one that maybe needs to pull this out of the second approval for the time being. And I don't know why we missed this the first time, so I apologize, but I can't find that we have an IGBA policy, which is one of the cross references at the bottom of this one. Maybe it's missing in our manual and we have it somewhere, just not in our current published manual. And if this is one that we're just updating with wording, then so be it, but maybe we need to come back and find the IGBA policy and add it in as a review for the next meeting or two.
I can do that.
Thank you. Now, you're on what, BBA?
So BBA/BBBB. There was a question from Mr. Quorum of whether the line membership on a school committee is not limited to race, color, sex, religion, national origin, gender identity, or sexual orientation. If saying not limited to was confusing. I didn't necessarily find it confusing, but I didn't know if anyone else wanted to deliberate on that suggestion.
Anyone else? No.
I feel like it's fairly standard that we use that wording, so I didn't find it confusing either.
Okay. I did not have anything on BEDA. Did anyone else?
Are we going in order here?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Did we handle BBA?
Yes. We can go,
Yeah, may I suggest that we just go in order, and if anybody wants to jump in with suggestions, they can at each.
we are going in order. We said BBA. Do you have something on BBA?
Nope, sorry.
There was a question on that one, so maybe Dr. Doherty. I don't know if it doesn't. I don't think it impacts the policy or the removal of the policy, but there was a question of whether we have a supervisor of attendance.
Yeah, so normally the building principal or assistant principal, if there is one, is the supervisor of attendance.
Okay.
For BEDB, I know that I had asked about whether we wanted to consider language about if 2 school committee members wanted to see a topic on the agenda, would that necessitate it happening? I confess I cannot remember whether we came to a conclusion on that or whether we left it to be for further discussion.
I don't think we came to a conclusion on it.
Yeah, that's why I left it the way it was.
Yeah. So did you want to say something on it, Aaron?
Yeah, I would propose an amendment. I don't have perfect language for it, but I would emulate what the select board has, which is if 2 members suggest an agenda item, that it goes on the agenda, or 2 or more members. I don't know.
Aaron, I was on the same page with you here, and I do have some draft language that I can offer if it's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it in the chat, but I'll also read it aloud, obviously, since everybody at home isn't seeing the chat. So I would add this after the purple paragraph. So before the paragraph that begins with the agenda will also provide, and it reads, if any 2 committee members request an item be added to the agenda, the chair shall accommodate such request if the topic is appropriately within the purview of the school committee. The chair shall include the item on an agenda as soon as is practical, shall recognize when the item is time sensitive, and shall not unreasonably delay. The rationale here really, for me, is pretty simple, which is I actually was likening this to our discussions about our policy for protecting minority viewpoints in the within the schools. Policy, we should take policy out of the current situation and thinking about the current personalities and write policy for policy's sake. And I would hate to ever find ourselves in a situation where the school committee, had I'll call it a minority tranche of people that couldn't get something on the agenda because of the decisions of a single person. And Chuck, I say this knowing that this would never happen with you as chair. I don't actually anticipate this would happen with any of the 6 of us as chair, but things have become increasingly political. Things have become increasingly difficult. We don't know where things will go going forward. And so what I would suggest is that this addition to the policy sort of protects that things at least come up for discussion if more than one member of the committee agrees that it should come up for discussion. It doesn't preclude the committee the majority of the committee from voting to table indefinitely that topic and not actually taking it up, but it at least gets it on the agenda at the request of those 2 committee members. So that's really the rationale here. And I think that the language that I provided, I hope at least still provides the chair with the flexibility to structure the agendas and the timing in an appropriate fashion.
Anybody else? Tom?
I'll just raise the counterpoint just so we have the conversation. And I think, I think the wording is good, Sean, from the intent of what you're trying to achieve here. But I'm if we take it to the extreme, I think there could be a bit of a challenge. And I think I'm going to just say it as well, if we look at the select board agendas and what's happened and what's not happened and what's gotten done and what's not gotten done, I think operationally there's already a very packed agenda. And so we have to be very cautious that this isn't abused if it is put out there as well, right? And I don't think any, again, to your point, I'm not thinking anybody here is going to abuse this necessarily, but if it's in a policy and says here, you have to do it, then it means that, you know, and it's in the purview, and, you know, then it means that the agendas could be hijacked for a period of time, and we may not get some operational items done, or we might be meeting, you know, every week or multiple times a week to get certain things done. You know, and I know other school committees in other towns have had like 2 or 3 meetings a week at 4 or 5 hours a meeting throughout this period of time. Not necessarily because of this case, but it's entirely possible that something like this could lead to something like that. And so I'd be cautious and instead be more deferential to the point of what the chair is, and they choose to do to keep, and working with the superintendent and working with the vice chair to make sure that the agendas are appropriate, that things are adjusted in a timely manner, that all voices are still heard, and that's why we, you know, put the person in charge as the chair that we do. You know, that we make sure that the work still needs to get done, that the committee has to get done. So I'd be a little concerned about this, is that it could be abused. I don't expect it would be by this group, but it could be abused to kind of hijack agendas for a longer period of time than maybe is just a single topic per se. So if we wanted to do this, I would suggest we do something that also then says limits it, so that it's, you know, over a period of a year, you know, one person could request, you know, 2 specific topics or something like that, because the agendas are very, very packed already. And I would think that there needs to be some limitation to the end game, if that makes sense.
Sean?
Yeah, so Tom, that does make sense. I guess I would just say, I think the check on that kind of abuse is that a majority of the committee could always reverse the policy if that starts to happen, right? And, you know, we would all be held responsible if we just reversed the policy because we didn't like hearing from 1 or 2 people. But we wouldn't be held responsible if we reversed the policy because 1 or 2 people were abusing that policy, right? So, you know, I hear what you're saying. I'm more concerned about, personally, I'm more concerned about preventing a situation where, you know, and the pendulum can swing in both directions, where folks, you know, with a minority viewpoint on a topic don't get to have that heard before the school committee. I'm more concerned with that scenario than you know, the risk that we get these, you know, out of control agendas and can't address that, you know, appropriately should that arise. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I still think this is the right call. And again, I'm leaving aside individual personalities and current personalities and the current makeup of the committee and the current chair, and just thinking about it purely from a policy perspective.
Carla?
Thanks, Chuck. If I had to recollect, I feel like we've already voted on this. I feel like we've already talked about it. Did we vote on this? We didn't vote on this?
No,
we just had a discussion?
There was no amendment or language to discuss necessarily. It was just an intent or an idea raised.
Okay, I don't recollect it, but I can't be 100% certain. My initial reaction is to, we've elected a chair, and the chair is the person who kind of sets the agenda, and I appreciate that a lot goes into setting agendas and trying to, you know, kind of create the agendas for the year between the chair and the vice chair and the superintendent. So I would hope that all voices would be able to be heard at any time. And I think a willingness from the chair is always imperative. So that's kind of just where I lie with this whole thing.
Erin?
So I agree completely with what you're saying, Carla, but it could be a little bit of an idealized view. So I just feel like by putting something like this in place, it it just gives a little bit more of a voice. And I know that we elect the chair to hold certain duties that those of us who are not the chair do not have to hold. But in the same vein, we're 6 equal members of the school committee. And sometimes in our different capacities in the district, we might, I can't even think of an example, but I don't know, we might be privy to an issue that we feel needs to be brought to the committee, or we might be, I don't know. We all talk to different people, right? We talk to different parents, we talk to different staff members. So again, if I'm not talking about current personalities, because I don't distrust that if I brought a concern to Chuck that he wouldn't say, okay, you know, we'll look at when we can fit something like that in if it's appropriate. But to me, this is just sort of a checks and balances, that if something is important enough to 2 members, that the chair will need to fit it in.
Sarah.
Thanks, Chuck. I like the intent of the amendment. I think my question is, and kind of where my brain is going, is more about how do we provide the balance, you know, kind of what we were speaking about earlier, of, you know, how do we rein it in if it gets out of control? And it also makes me wonder too, the way it's currently written in the purple paragraph is that any school committee member, staff member, or citizen may suggest items of business. The proposed amendment only specifically allows the school committee members, if there's 2 or more, who request it to be added to the agenda. Do we need to be inclusive that would be extended to staff members and citizens as well? And then does that further the concern of it going off the rails?
I mean, sorry, I should raise.
Go ahead.
I mean, with all due respect to staff members and citizens, you know, they're not members of the committee. So I don't necessarily think that the policy needs to equally apply. You know, I mean, a scenario that comes to mind for me is, what if there were a topic that was potentially embarrassing for a chair, right? Would you want a chair to have sort of the sole authority, the sole ability to not have that? And it has to be something that would be sort of appropriate for us to discuss generally. So I don't have an exact example, but you know, would you want a chair to have the sole ability to squash that topic from being raised at school committee if it were appropriately within our purview? So again, I think it's important that we all sort of try very hard not to think about specific individuals and specific, you know, look at the Brady Bunch here on the screen and say, if that person were chair, how would I feel? If that person were chair, how would I feel? And just think about it from a policy perspective. I hear the abuse concerns. I totally agree, Tom. I do think the check against that is that if a majority of the committee feels that it's being abused, individual items can be tabled indefinitely, so they take up, you know, seconds on an agenda versus minutes or hours. And the policy itself could be revised if necessary. But in the meantime, you know, I think this provides a good balance and a good protection for views that might be in the minority on the committee from time to time.
I think, were you saying something, Tom?
Go ahead. I was going to think of something, but go ahead.
So I think the way, you know, I've read the wording in the chat several times as I'm sitting here looking at it. I think the way that's worded is appropriate, that it allows the, you know, I'm assuming the two committee members to have a dialogue with the chair, and, you know, a back and forth as to whether something goes on the agenda. I think it also, the part I like most about that is that the sentence that says the chair shall include the item on the agenda as soon as is practical. And I think that helps with the concern about packing agendas. I mean, that the chair could say, you know, I think we should talk about this, but we can't do it until, you know, next month or something. So I think it does, the way that's worded, still give the chair the ability to do the job of setting the agenda versus kind of getting taken over by this. I don't know if that made sense, but
it does make sense. And, you know, I think we're working through this to come to a suitable agreement, probably. Sean, would you accept some sort of friendly amendment that says committee members will be judicious or something along those lines in pushing for or requesting additional agenda items? I'm not thinking of the wording right now, but I want to put a check on the other side as well without putting a hard check, right? So not two. Two was a bad example before, and I can think of a case in my past here on the committee where I wanted something on the agenda, and we weren't able to get it on there. So I could certainly think that there is there will be times and chances where that happens, but I want to make sure that future committees as well as the current committee is judicious in their choice of topics and not just throwing, you know, for lack of anything against the wall. I think there's a good reason here. And I think to your other point, and maybe the judicious use also addresses your one worry about a potential embarrassing situation. Does it make sense that there might be an exception? It may not be necessary if we agree to this, but an alternative might be if we didn't agree to this, adding an exception where 4 or more, right, where there's enough people that are interested or concerned would raise it, in which case there's something there. So just ask those two. The first question is, would you accept a friendly amendment with the words of judicious use or something like that? And then we can, if this doesn't pass, then I have another alternative that might achieve a similar goal.
So yes, I would agree. I would accept the friendly amendment. I put text in the chat again and again for those at home. Committee members should be judicious in utilizing this clause. I think that's totally fair. You know, the intent here isn't for it to let 2 people kind of completely waylay the agenda, right? That's certainly not what any of us want. On the second piece, the 4 or more exception, I mean, OML is the obvious concern there, and that is part of why actually I think kind of this two threshold is important, because as soon as you have 2 and then you go talk to the chair about putting it in the agenda, you've had some, from my perspective, some degree of deliberation because you've shared an opinion, right? That this is important, we should talk about it. And so that's part of where this comes from as well.
okay. Well, just before we on this, I'm just, as I'm reading that, committee members should be, I think, thoughtful and judicious in utilizing this clause.
That works for me. If it works for Sean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aaron, you had did you take it down? I thought I saw you typing.
Tom had changed what he was saying. So you had started to say, like, maybe putting a limit on how many times people could do this. And I didn't want to do that because I would hate to see, like, say, like, Carla and I came up with something at one point that we wanted on the agenda, and then later, you know, Tom, you approached me and said, let's, what do you think about this? And then I would say, oh no, I already reached my quota. I can't go to the chair about that. And then you've already talked to me about it. So I wouldn't want to, like, start backing us into corners, but I like the thoughtful and judicious. I support that.
Tom?
So I don't think it'll be necessary to go down the 4 route, but agenda items without deliberation are something that we can talk about outside of the meeting within OML, right? Agenda items is a carve out that we can discuss and request without an OML violation. But I hear your concern about potential, if you're arguing or fighting that it should be on the agenda, you might get into deliberation as a result of that. So I understand that concern. And I like where we've ended up. Committee members should be thoughtful and judicious in utilizing this clause.
Anyone else? Carla?
I read it and I like the clause, but as I'm reading it, regardless if the committee members are thoughtful and judicious, and we hope that they will come to it in that light, but it ultimately still is the decision of the chair, right? It's ultimately the decision of the chair to fit it in when it's appropriate. I almost don't feel like that clause buys us anything. Because it's ultimately the decision of the chair.
Yeah, Carla, the objective here, I hope that this actually does give the chair discretion to fit it in when it's appropriate. What this doesn't give the chair the discretion to do is decide unilaterally that they don't want to see a topic discussed before the committee. And so, you know, I'm trying to think of specific examples, but if there was some arcane policy that wasn't terribly time sensitive and you and I, Carla, came to Chuck and said, we think this should be on the agenda, Chuck could very well say, cool, our agendas are packed for the next, 6 meetings, but we'll get it on in July or August or whatever, right? That would be okay. If there was something else that was sort of time sensitive, and we came to Chuck and said, Chuck, this is urgent, it probably needs to be taken up in one of our next couple of meetings, then that would be, Chuck still has some discretion, but this sort of implies, implies that the chair, whomever that might be, should recognize the time sensitivity of that and act accordingly. And so that might mean deprioritizing something else. It might mean squeezing in one more thing to an existing meeting. It might mean adding a meeting, in a real emergency type case. But the discretion for the chair to do what's right from a timing perspective is still there.
I guess when you, oh, sorry, Chuck. Okay. I guess when you say it like that, well, the way I look at it, if there isn't an issue that that at the chair's discretion, he or she decides that it is not of as importance as other issues, and it is May, and the chair's done being the chair at the end of the school year, and they push it off, right? What options do the school committee have at that point is to vote the chair off, right? That's how we as a board decide if we appreciate what how the chair is conducting him or herself, right? Is when the election comes up, you vote the chair off. That's how I look at it, is we have mechanisms in place. The chair is the person responsible for setting the agenda, and that's how I look at it. And if you're not happy with how the chair does that, then when things come up, when the new election comes up, you vote the chair off.
Tom, did you have, or was that before?
That's before.
Sean?
No, I don't have anything to add.
It says you're typing.
I was, but I realized I was going to say the same thing in different words, and I'm going to respect everybody's time and stop arguing in favor of something I've already made a case for.
Okay, anybody else?
Just real quick to answer Carla's last point. It's entirely possible, just something to think about as you think about it from a vote perspective, that you as a member ask the new chair on, July 1st for something to be put on the agenda, and he or she declines it, even though it's within the realm, it's judiciously and thoughtful, and then you have a year to wait until the next chair. We don't have anywhere in our policies that I can find a way to say to recall our chair if we don't feel like he or she is doing the job for the period of time until the next election either. So I think, yes, there's a possibility that if it's a request now that we can just wait, but having to wait a year could be a bit of a downer, right? You might not get that thing that you think is important done. and it's not just you, because it can't be just you. It'd have to be somebody else helping and saying, yes, I think this is important as well. So I think that adds a little bit of a check too. So especially with this judicious thing, I've become more comfortable with this, and I probably will be supporting it. So.
Yeah, I think, Carla, I don't really see this coming up very often. Maybe I'm being naive, but if there's something that's going on that the chair doesn't know about that should be on the agenda, then shame on the chair. I mean, it should, it's very rare that that there's situations where, well, even when we don't have this policy now, it's been very rare that anybody's come to me when I've been the chair. Tom, I don't think you said you didn't get something on the agenda. I don't think that was me, but maybe it was.
You were chair, but somebody else squashed it, so.
So I don't really see this, I don't see it coming up that often, but maybe so I guess I don't have a problem with it from that perspective. I don't see it as every other week occurrence. Someone's going to be saying, I want this on the agenda. Just don't see that happening. So. Anyway. Anyone else? Okay, so that was
that is an amendment we need to vote on, right?
Yeah, in the BBA.
BEDB.
Right. So we'll vote on the amendment as crafted in the chat.
Right at the same time, Sean. Yep.
Tom.
Hopefully it's the
Should I
same
read
thing.
the whole thing out loud one more time for the sake of everyone at home? Is that?
Yes, thank you.
If any two committee members request an item be added to the agenda, the chair shall accommodate such request if the topic is appropriately within the purview of the school committee. The chair shall include the item on an agenda as soon as is practical, shall recognize when the item is time sensitive, and shall not unreasonably delay. Committee members should be thoughtful and judicious in utilizing this clause.
You said delay? Is that it says deny in the chat? Did you mean it to say deny or delay?
No, it says delay.
Mine is wrong.
To be delay.
Mine says deny.
Mine. I mistyped from Sean's original request. So
all right.
Take Sean's. His is
I see it now.
The intent.
Okay. Seeing no other discussion, Carla.
No.
Sarah.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chuck. Aye. Okay, now we're on BIA. Did you have anything? Was there anything on that, Aaron?
There was a suggestion in the second paragraph from Mr. Coram that committee is redundant. So it says the school committee chair and the superintendent shall assist each new member to understand the committee's functions, policies, and procedures of the committee as soon after election as possible. I would support an amendment to remove of the committee.
So second. Any other discussion? Tom?
I would make an alternate amendment and strike the committee's quote unquote at the beginning and just understand the functions, policies, and procedures of the committee instead. It achieves the same goal, but I think it actually reads a little bit more correctly, for lack of a better way to say, or smoothly. It's not more correct, it's just a little smoother. That's my opinion, but it may not be correct. It may not be an actual factual opinion. So I don't know, Aaron, if you agree or disagree.
I agree. I like that.
Okay, did you get that, John?
Yep.
So, sorry, we're striking the word committees before functions, policies, and procedures now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, works for me.
Okay, ready for the vote? Carla,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye.
Chuck, there are a couple of public comment points. I don't know if you want to take them now. They are related to past policy discussions, or if you
Sure.
want to. Okay. So first one is Jeffrey Coram Ridge Road. To Chuck's point, I don't think I'm revising the intent of the policies. I'm just proposing some improved, clarified wording. Jeffrey Coram Ridge Road. If the principal is the supervisor of attendance, does that mean the SC needs to vote to approve all the principal appointments?
No.
No, this is a specialized, if this were a specialized carved out role that we had, which we just don't have at the current time, but we may have and some districts do, then we would have to vote to approve that. But at the current time, we do not. And that is MGL, that if there's a role for a supervisor of attendance, that we would have to approve it.
Correct.
Okay. Now we're on, was there any other, did you have any others, Aaron?
Yes. I didn't have anything for CBD or CE. Did anyone else? Under CHC, we still have the word regulation. Was that purposeful, or was it supposed to be procedure? The very last word. Was that one supposed to be regulation?
It's actually a couple places. So
yeah, it's also in the first sentence.
And it's in the name.
Yeah.
Right. So this should probably, I'll just piggyback, Aaron, if you don't mind, and suggest we change this to procedures dissemination. And then that first paragraph to see that the procedures developed to implement. And then the last paragraph, prior to the effective date of the procedure. And the reason for the changes, obviously, is regulation is a state thing. Procedure is an implementation of a policy that the district does. And I tried to cross-reference. I don't think CHC is cross-referenced anywhere and named regulation dissemination, so I don't think we have to worry about any cross-reference. So that's an amendment, Chuck.
Yeah. So we'll vote on the amendment.
I'll second the amendment first. I don't know if we did that. Okay.
Aaron?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Chuck, aye.
Yeah, I didn't have anything for CH or CBI. But on BDE, I thought we had discussed in the very first sentence taking out at their annual organizational meeting, with the understanding that we might be appointing subcommittees at any point during the year, and we might not need to appoint any subcommittees at our annual meeting.
We did, because we inserted the as necessary language.
Okay, so I propose an amendment to take out at their annual organizational meeting.
I think we also, sorry, Aaron, if I could guess, well, we haven't seconded yet.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Aaron, I think, friendly amendment, I think we also struck for a period of 1 year because we talked about a different approach to dissolution. So I think it's everything from at their annual organizational meeting for a period of 1 year. It's the entire second half of that sentence.
Sounds right. Way back when we last met.
A month ago. That was going to be what I was going to say too. So sounds like Aaron's taking that as a friendly amendment.
Certainly not a hostile amendment.
Anyone else? Okay, ready? Aaron?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. That's all of them, right? Tom?
I have this BDE. I don't know if this was because of the adjustment, but bullet number 2 now reads very weird to me. If I'm reading it right, based on the strikeouts, it says the committee chairperson, subject to the approval by the committee, will be appointed the subcommittee chairperson and its members. Will appoint the sub.
Will appoint.
Okay, so now that I read it, okay. Will appoint the subcommittee chairperson and its members. All right, I was misreading that to say the subcommittee chairperson would be appointed by themselves or something, but now okay. Now that I'm trying to read all the lines and whatnot, the committee chairperson, subject to approval by the committee, being the school committee, will appoint the subcommittee chairperson and its members.
Correct.
Okay.
So now we need a motion on ABB, BI, BO, BI,
Well, we have a motion on the table already, but now many policies have been amended. So I will recast that motion and try to read it back as I did, so I don't have to read all the letters again.
And Tom, did you want to withhold the second reading on the one where the cross-reference?
Yeah.
ACE.
Was it ACE? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Good luck. We'll all eagerly await how this turns out.
Motion to approve the policies as listed in the memo from Dr. Doherty on May 13th. Motion to approve the second reading of the policies as listed in the memo from Dr. Doherty on May 13th, 2021, titled Second Reading of School Committee Policies, except for ACE, and including all approved amendments of other policies discussed this evening.
Pretty good. Second.
Most importantly, hopefully Samantha get that.
It's on video. We can play it back.
Okay, ready for the vote. Aaron?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay, I think that concludes our business for this evening, unless anyone has anything else. Tom?
There are a couple of additional Q&A
Okay.
things, which I get through a little apologies again. I was reading through the memos, and then I have a request as well that may impact one of the school committee member too. So first, the Q&A. Jeffrey Coram, Ridge Road. Thank you to Aaron for addressing my emailed comments. Jeffrey Coram Ridge Road, policy CH. Consequently, it is expected that all school committee employees and students will carry them out. Is it intended to, as written, or is it meant to be school committee members, employees, and students? Technically, we're not employees, so that might be a good point motion for reconsideration. CH, if somebody wants to look at that real quick. And then it's along that line, what are school committee employees? Isn't the superintendent the only employee of the school committee? Well, actually, technically, the superintendent is the one we hire, but everybody's an employee of the school committee. We're the contracting body, so the teachers, the paras, we're the contracting body technically. So we may not need a change if anybody wants to look at CH real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little clunky, and clean English, clean language would probably say something like, all RPS employees and students or something along those lines. But to your point, Tom, it's not, it's still technically correct.
Yep. Okay. Is everybody else comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm just reading it. Yeah. It's fine.
So my request is that we re-examine or potentially delay the start of the June 17th meeting. And I think that's a problem as there's a teacher staff recognition that night. But the reason for the request, and this impacts Carla as well, is that Parker is having its graduation that night.
And Coolidge is also.
Coolidge might be also. So and that might impact teacher staff ability to attend. Right, so
so we run into this and you will continue to run into it every year. I've missed a lot of things because of my school committee. So I mean, I'm all right with doing it, but just beware that there's going to be a lot of these instances, and I don't know whether, with it being staff recognition, whether we'll be able to delay because of that. So, go ahead, John.
We could move it to either the Monday or the Wednesday of that week. We could look at it. The Coolidge and Parker are taking a look at the 17th, and they're going to have it on the 17th, but they may be doing it a little bit differently, but it's still going to be a conflict.
Okay. All right, so we have some time that we'll try and figure it out, Tom. Maybe so that you're suggesting maybe start at 8 as opposed to 7 or something?
I mean, we could either start at 8 as a potential, or as John is outlining, we could do it on the 16th, which would be Wednesday. I think actually some of us might be in some negotiations on that day, but the 16th or the 14th, or technically the last day of school, the 21st. It wouldn't be the first time or the last time that we met on June 24th either if we pushed it out the following week. Although with staff appreciation, that just may mean some juggling. So we can look at that together, I think, as we look at the schedule, ironically, as we just got done talking about the schedule and getting things aligned appropriately. But I just wanted to note that potential conflict. There are a few more public comments as well. Jeffrey Coram Ridge Road, unless SC members are also supposed to carry them out. This is again regarding CH. Staying with CH, policy CH, Jeffrey Coram Ridge Road as written does not say that SC members are expected to carry out its own policies, and I'm not sure if SC can expect students to carry them out. And then Monica Flaherty, Grove Street. This is more of a general question, which we may not be able to answer tonight, but maybe take away. For the upcoming summer program announced by DESE and the Baker-Polito administration, due to the effects of the pandemic, there's a math component accelerating math. Is the district looking to extend programming and applications to all students at all levels? And along with that same thing is, with all the transitions at multiple levels of the school district, who is the point person overseeing these programs? Dr. Stice? Question mark.
So we are looking at all those things. The biggest challenge we're facing right now is getting staff to do it. And I think staff are at the point where they want to probably take a break. So that is our biggest challenge right now, is getting staff to teach the summer programming.
Okay. Is there any other committee questions or comments or motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sarah,
Hi.
Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Chuck, aye. Thank you, Dr. Doherty.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.